Folks, thanks so much for joining in today. Thanks for being among the increasing numbers of people in Canada, US, around the world who are joining in to the podcast here. And we're trying to make it even more flexible and available. Looking for some technicians here helping me to get it onto a number of other platforms. We're covering everything from Iran today to what's happening with young people among chess, and a couple of young brothers who've got an amazing new AI app out there. They're making money as well as bringing young people along into thinking about more things than what's right in front of them. Let's jump right into it here. Trump has announced now there's going to be an extension of the ceasefire in Iran related to the Strait of Hormuz. A couple of ships have been captured, and he's saying very clearly that, he's still losing patience, but he wants this to end peacefully. And of course, you're still going to see then your price of oil and gas is going to jump around. Markets are jumping around because if if people could predict what the president is going to say on a particular day related to the ceasefire, they could make a lot of money, or what the Iranians are going to do. So that's a bit of the question, as I've talked about here. And we're one of the first ones here. You heard it about what's happening within Iran and the leadership there as the leadership continues to get killed off, starting a few weeks ago with the Ayatollah himself. And so what's been happening, and we talked about this, we were one of the first ones in media. You picked it up here, you're among the first to see it. There's a split within Iran. There's the Iranian, of course, the Revolutionary Guard, the IRGC. They are the real militant ones. They are the ones who really seem the most committed to, they don't care, honestly, if the earth evaporates into a giant nuclear ball, and if they are the ones to bring it on. So they have, as we've seen in the discussions with Vice President Vance that took place in Pakistan, you saw the president there, and the president coming out with a certain position on that. His name is Masoud Pezeshkian, sorry if I don't get the pronunciation right. He got back to Iran, and the IRGC said, nope, we're not buying into that. We're not buying into a ceasefire, and they put him back in his place. And they've also, an interesting development, we're still trying to decide if, in fact, the son of the Ayatollah is still alive, Mojtaba Khamenei. We know that he's lost a leg, so as people say, the regime is really standing on its last legs. And but he's being circled, he's being controlled. Nobody seems to know if, in fact, he's the one who's putting out the news items. So an internal struggle definitely going on. I think that could be a good thing, though we don't want the hardliners. They are all hardliners, even when you talk about the president, just maybe not quite as hard as some of the others. But that's what we're running into. And it does seem now that the leadership has been consolidated among the IRGC. Not a good thing if it comes to wanting to deal with people with any kind of common sense, even in that region. Reports come out more and more, in Canada and the US, we say, we just wish people would get it figured out in the Middle East. More and more of the Middle Eastern countries, other than Iran, the record is very clear, and they're talking about this in some meetings that they were having, that every country, every Middle Eastern country, Muslim country, that talks about looking for peace, establishing peace, recognizing Israel, goes on to become quite wealthy, quite stable, and its citizens flourish relative to, let's say, Iran or Iraq. The countries that don't move on, and presently that would mainly be Iran, are the ones that remain engulfed in poverty, in people being, human rights being trashed and thrashed, even though, let's face it, some of these other Middle Eastern countries aren't exactly paragons of wonderful human rights applications. But no question about it, the Middle Eastern countries, these other Arab nations, want to see Iran put in its place. They want to see their region flourish. And so, we're going to see what prevails there and which force takes over, the extremists or the more moderate ones in this race to peace. I just want to throw in something here about race, because I'm a marathon runner, as you know, and I've run the marathon a few times. And in not just in the marathon, in China's Beijing marathon, people are sort of shocked and amazed because they've got these humanoid robots that are also running the marathon. And everybody's shocked and amazed that they beat the humans. I don't know why people are shocked at that, and people are saying this is a great thing to fear. The robots, they're just they're cars with legs, is what they are. They are machines. Of course, they're going to run faster than a human being. I don't know why people are getting all upset and worked out and up about it. And some of them, as you know, if you've seen any of the videos, the one in China was running along and tripped over a little thread and then got mad at itself, and the robot itself tore itself apart on the track. So it's not there yet, but I don't know, folks. It's still running a marathon. It's still a human feat. There will always be machines that can run faster, move faster than humans. Let's settle down and just kind of watch it develop. There's a couple of brothers who have, in the whole world of AI, they've really broken through in developing, and along with AI and chat, they've developed, it's more than self-improvement. They've looked at all the various self-improvements. They see the Sam Altmans of the world and other big CEOs, coming out with their books, 5 Steps to Financial Freedom, and 8 things you need to do, and 4 movies you need to watch. And these 2 young brothers, Catholic brothers, have said, we're not really drawing from the experience of our saints, as they say, and from the ones who've really gone through trials and really know what spiritual growth is about. And so their entire app and on self-improvement has to do with drawing from the great Christian spiritual leaders of the past. And it's getting a ton of attention. The other thing getting a ton of attention, we always talk about New York City, as you know, or as one of my favorite mayors, that's a joke, Mamdani, the famous Muslim Islamist backed anti-Israel, anti-Semitic, strong communist. Those are the nicest things I can say about him. And I've been saying, and others have been saying for some weeks, that you're going to see an exodus of millionaires and of wealthy people. Well, the most recent numbers have just come out, and 114,000 people in the last year have left New York City. They've departed. Other cities in the country are increasing. But here's the interesting part. 40% of the people of that 114,000 that have fled the city of New York are actually middle income and lower, mainly lower income. So it's not just the so-called wealthy that are suffering under these ridiculous communist economic policies of Mayor Mamdani. It is poor people too. And I've always said that when you bring in socialism, you will always be lowering everybody's quality of life. And it's just a test case. It's happening like a laboratory test right before our eyes in Washington, D.C. In taking over those, what's happening in, that was in New York. In Washington, D.C., the trade relations are picking up now. The trade discussions are coming as far as between the U.S. and Canada. And I gave Prime Minister Carney some credit. He's appointed some trade representatives onto his advisory council, some of whom are conservatives. And I talked about that over the last couple of days. And Jean Charest, who's the former premier of Quebec, seemed to be taking a bit of a lead. And what the U.S. are saying, they're sort of firing some early shots. They're saying we don't like the fact that in Canada, they've taken the U.S. liquor off the shelves. And of course, Canada's saying, well, we don't like what the U.S. is doing. And one of the things, and folks, I'm going to tell you, it's going to keep barreling down to this. They'll talk about liquor, they'll talk about car parts, they'll talk about different things, and those are all very important. The subsidies that Canada has in place on our agriculture products, our agriculture subsidies are the single biggest thorn for trade negotiations, not just with the U.S., but with any country. When I was Minister of International Trade, that was the first thing we had to deal with, whether I was talking and doing trade negotiations in South Korea or with countries in Europe, wherever it was. Always the main source of irritation was our protection in Canada, agriculture subsidies to farmers. I'll let you folks decide and debate all that you want. I'm just telling you it was the number one issue. I can remember the first time I met the trade representative from New Zealand at the time. This was back in the mid-2000s, and I was Minister of International Trade. And before we had even shaken hands to start our discussion, he said, that if I thought I was going to make any headway with him on our trade discussions on tariffs from New Zealand that we wanted to see lowered, he said, it'll be over my dead body, he said, related to our trade subsidies in agriculture. It's going to continue to be a big thorn. And Jean Charest, of course, being from Quebec, former Premier of Quebec, he's going to be showing very little room to move on that. So we'll see. And it's not just protecting agriculture products, but of course, when a country like Canada in this case says they're not going to move on one, then the other country on the other side, whether it's the US or whoever it is, says, well, then we're going to make your citizens pay across a whole bunch of products, and we're going to slam tariffs on a wide variety of your trade products. So we'll see. That's going to be the interesting one. There'll be lots of talk and fluff all around it. It's really going to zero in on that. Well, in British Columbia, one of Prime Minister Evy's, the NDP Premier, the Socialist Premier, Minister Dix, has said as far as an increased pipeline capacity going across northern British Columbia, he says, ain't going to happen. So again, we have a province that is saying, no, this could be tremendously beneficial to First Nations group. More than that, to have our refined products, Canada has the best oil and gas refined products in the world, going to help countries like China. China is dependent, remember, without our oil and gas, they're dependent on Iran's oil and gas. And Iran, of course, comes with all of the nuclear threat that is going on there. And here we have the minister in BC saying, ain't going to happen. So that's causing a lot of concern. We could be helping the world. And again, it appears that we don't want to be doing that. Well, on the Canada scene too, you remember the very tragic incident that just recently happened. We were one of the first to report on it, but that awful killing, the shooting that took place in Mexico at one of their famous spiritual sites where they worship the goddess of the sun, the god of the moon, and the pyramids, and to see a Canadian woman killed along with many other people being shot. And they've now what happened was police got there fairly quickly, the Mexican police. They neutralized the shooter. Neutralized, of course, is a nice word for saying they blew him into hell. And his name is Julio Cesar Jasso Ramirez. And in the notes that they're finding on him, this just shows what a wacko this guy was. Very tragic. He's referencing the Columbine shootings. Remember that from many, many years ago. So crazy things happening. It doesn't appear that it is an Islamist impulse that got this done. We'll wait and see more. By the way, if you're looking for signs, I just want to mention this before we keep moving on. If you've heard of the Lyrids, that's a group of comet trails, actually, that's going to be available tonight if you want to. And whether on the East Coast or the West Coast, anywhere around midnight through till dawn. If you look into the eastern sky, it's only time of year you get to see it. But hey, if you miss it this year, you'll catch it next year, because this was first spotted, this little group of comets and comet trails, in the year 687 BC by Chinese astronomers. So it's been around there, but might see a nice, fun meteor shower there. Well, in terms of things that are getting showered, the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust, that is the organization which cares for, monitors, and maintains the purity of everything to do with Shakespeare, including his writings. They have now agreed, and they have said, they've listened to the woke crowd, and they said, yes, we agree that Shakespeare's writings were racist, were homophobic, were colonialist, were misogynist, and on it goes. So let's see if they start to get banned. It's interesting as different sides look to banning books. Let's see if Bill Shakespeare, that's what I call him, not exactly a first name basis, but imagine, and I love his writings, and we'll see if that tag sticks or not. I think they doth protest too much, but we'll see if those things hold up. Well, in terms of President Trump's chances and the Republicans in continuing on their very slight majority in Congress as the midterms come up. Now, remember at the midterms, a lot of people outside the United States, including Canada, don't realize this. So when they talk about Congress really, what that means really, technically, is the Congress, or the joining together of the Senate and also then the House of Representatives. That would be roughly equivalent to our House of Commons and our Senate. In the House of Representatives, they run to get elected every 2 years. A lot of people overlook that. Every 2 years, they are in constant election mode. Senators only have to get elected once every 6 years. And every 2 years, a third of the Senate comes up for election, about a third, so that there's not a massive overhaul. So winning the majority in the so-called midterms, that's between the two presidential runs, is very important. The Republicans have a slim majority, usually, almost always. Whoever is the president with that party, Republican or Democrat, his party almost always drops come the midterms because stuff the president does, some people don't like it, and people who've got their party has the president, like the Republicans, sometimes they're a little motivated to get out there in the midterms because they figure, hey, our guy's in the White House, we're good. Those chances got a little bit tougher for President Trump because in the state of Virginia, they just held what's called a redistricting vote. So what they can do now, we do this in Canada, but we're not quite as let's say activist in it. What the ruling party will do in a particular state, they'll say, hey, let's see if we can move around some of the districts, redraw those lines, and have it more favorable for our party coming into the election. So what they'll do, they'll look at a big city, and they'll say, and by the way, this is what happened in Ottawa with Pierre Poilievre when he lost his seat, if you remember in the last election. So what a party will do, they'll say, okay, here's a heavily urban seat, and it really votes heavily, like let's say 70, 80% for the Democrats. So, but the rural seat right next to it tends to go, it's a little closer, tends to go to the Republicans. So what they'll do is they'll carve hundreds of thousands of solid Democrat voters in the city. They'll redraw the boundary line that pushes their voting then combines it with a rural riding that usually goes slightly conservative. So what they're doing is they flood it with Democrats, and then when the election comes, that seat, that rural seat that had been previously won, let's say by the Republicans, very good chance it'll flip and go Democrat. And so, but you have to get the right to do that each time you want to do it has to be gained and won in your own state. So the governor will bring forth a proposal and he or she will say, look, we're going to propose some redistricting. And if it passes in the state legislature, they redistrict it. And that's what affects you in the federal election. They successfully, with a lot of encouragement from former President Obama going on the air a lot on this, the state legislature and the people went out to a vote. And the people of Virginia narrowly voted, yes, let's redistrict it in favor of the Democrats coming up into the midterms. That passed. That means the Democrats could gain up to 4 more seats in the House of Representatives. And that could really tilt the balance on the federal side. So credit is going to the House Minority Leader, Hakeem Jeffries, for sort of quarterbacking that through. We'll see if that makes a difference or not, but it's just made it a little tougher for the Republicans to gain a majority. We'll see how that goes. Well, in terms of gaining a lot, Bruce Springsteen is running onto a bit of criticism. He just had another very successful concert. The guy is the star. There's no question about that. And of course, he takes very strong, very anti-Trump positions in his songs and in his deliberations. He's very pro-immigration. He doesn't like illegal immigrants being tossed out, and he's kind of like the folk hero of the people. But he's coming into a little bit of criticism because in his last concert just on Monday in Newark, tickets going as high as $3,000. That's not scalped tickets. Those are ticket prices that he, as the performer, gets to sign on to. So he signed on to not too many of his, he says he's out there for the working man, the working people, not too many working people being able to get in on those $3,000 tickets. And he actually went to court to stop people from doing T-shirt sales with either his sign on it or his No Kings. His flags go for $90. So he's running into a bit of heat as being against capitalism, but charging hugely capitalist prices. We'll see if that'll make a difference. One of his songs that really rocked everybody was the song about no war. So we'll see if that makes any difference. Looking at a little thing that's going on with, especially with Gen Z women, and there's more a bit of a concern because they're saying, we have gone from, as teen girls, we've gone from acne gel to anti-aging cream, like just without even a pause. And there's a bit of concern: is there too much focus on this? Not enough on the natural look? I don't know about that, but I do. My heart goes out, whether it's girls or guys, the amount of time that they're spending, just hours and hours per day, not just staring into that camera, but on buying all of these things to look, a teeny weeny bit better? I don't know. But anyway, it's becoming among Gen Z and watching their postings becoming a bit of a concern. Are they getting too wired to the constant treatments? Well, I'll tell you what else is happening in New York City on the positive side. The New York City Chess Federation, which is one of the most famous in the world for training up young people, they have thousands and thousands of people. They say that chess is now at its most popular level in the last 20 years. And parents are paying even huge money to chess tutors. So those of you who are worried about being replaced by AI, you can, one parent was quoted as paying that, $75 to $100 an hour is nothing to pay to get your kid better. One set of parents said they've paid so far $20,000 to have their son, and there's more women, more young girls getting into chess. Overall, I think you'll agree, probably a good thing, getting people off the screens and into some hard brain use, which of course is chess. Well, talking about hard brain use, so study.com is one of the major sites that offers university degrees, genuine university degrees, but online. And what they're finding is young people have an amazing capacity. And this isn't just what they call diploma mills. This is serious degree work that is similar to what's available in the universities. You can get them for about $1,500 per item towards your degree. And young people are just knocking these off in record time, and they are being checked to make sure they're not just getting AI to do the courses. And it's really, and I think this is a positive thing, because really is the model we have of university now is the same one that's been in use for probably 400 years, where young people would leave their homes and go to the big cities. This trend started in Europe, of course, to Vienna and to London and to other places where they would study under the so-called best known professors in the world. And they would be gone for 4 years because there was no local, at that level, no local education available. That's a model now, and it has now evolved, of course, into at least 4 years where the students' earning years are interrupted. They come away with huge debt. In the U.S., you can easily be in debt to the tens of thousands, not hundreds of thousands of dollars. One of the main reasons they can't then go on to buy a house. And here there is a model when they can do the learning, they can learn what they have to learn, and they're measured and they're tested against university students. They're doing equally as well as not well. So why are we saying that the 4-year model has to be the only one? Let people pursue that if that's what they want, but you have to, in this space age day, you have to allow other laneways for people to get those degrees, because they're coming out just as efficient, just as proficient as those who want the 4-year approach. Well, there's an interesting development also. I just talked about the two young guys, young Catholic boys, who have developed that AI-related bot to really help people with spiritual growth. One of the biggest sellers now, and this is the Atlantic magazine is talking about this, John Mark Comer. He's a 45-year-old interdenominational pastor, and his books are off the charts as we're seeing a growing rise. And what's he talking about? The discipline, the daily discipline of getting up early to pray, of reading the Bible, I mean other stuff too, but focusing on the Bible, memorizing Bible verses, and fasting and following Sabbath observance, taking a day to rest and apply yourself to prayer and to Bible reading. Off the charts. His books, I'm not suggesting that's the way to make a buck, but the demand for that type of thing is going through the roof. And closing with that, the College of St. Joseph, it's called St. Joseph the Worker, because Joseph, of course, was a worker. And it's founded by an Oxford-educated Catholic intellectual by the name of Jacob imam, and this is in Ohio, and this article is in the New Yorker. And what he's done, it's a more or less a standard liberal arts degree, but of course in Catholic religious studies. But with the certification, with that degree, you also have to take courses in, are you ready? Trade certification in carpentry, in air conditioning and furnace repair, electrical work, and plumbing. And they are seeing this. Most of them, not all, are men that are taking this. They're disillusioned with their smartphones. They're recognizing AI might be replacing them. I think the worry about AI replacing everybody is a little overstated. However, college degree, liberal arts, and you can get your plumbing and electrical and other certifications too. Interesting to see how it's moving. Thanks, folks. We will tune in with you tomorrow.